Hello, welcome to Truck Stop Murder and True Crime Podcast. I be Gary Howard, and I got an interesting case today. But first, as always, if you're a new listener, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm a truck driver. I drive over the 48 continental in the United States, and I talk about the truck stops and murders that may happen around this truck stop. Well, at least I try to stay close by it. And like I said, if you're a return listener, thank you. But that's what I do. And today is going to be a fourth warning that it has to do with torture, a brutal kid murder, and done by kids. And one of them, the murder victim, is a child. So if this is something you don't want to listen to, then I advise you. Thank you for trying, but maybe this episode's not for you. And please, as always, please share with friends. Go rate, review anywhere you can. And I had a Patreon and PayPal, but I don't know if I have that set up right. I'll have to go look into that and set it within my website so you can go one spot. But enough of that. But first, tomorrow's a special day for me. Tomorrow is my 20th anniversary. Now it's the 20th anniversary of the first date with my wife. My wedding anniversary is August 28th. But since the Army made me get that married, that was the Armed Force Day. We were already common law married in Texas. So I recognize that date as an anniversary, May 11th, 20 years. So everybody send Desra a message, congratulate her. Well, no, she's not a big Facebook social media person. But today's episode brings me to Waddy, Kentucky, at the Flying J in Waddy, Kentucky. If you want to know where that's at, that's on I-65 on Highway 395, exit 43. And for most part, it's a low rating truck stop. It's like a 2.6 out of 355 reviews. And I'll get to the reviews. But yeah, people are not happy about it. Really low. Diesel right now is $3.15 a gallon. So that was from 7 hours ago. And DEF is $3.09. So if you try to plan on fuel up there, that's the price. And as of right now, there's lots of spots. Right now, my time, it's actually the 10th at 10:41 in the morning, and there's lots of spots. But as you'll soon see, a lot of these spots they have a lot of pay spots, reserve spots. There's 110. I don't know quite the numbers of how many are reserves. I don't remember. But I just did a reset here not too long ago. Seems like I should know. But yeah, so if you're driving through here in a truck or whatever, or a car, and you're hungry, you want to get a bite to eat, this is not the place to be. You have a Denny's there, and you'll see more about that. And I could kind of verify because I know I said I was going to get Denny's, but I got tired of waiting, so I just left. And the Flying J's food there, they have pizzas, chicken tenders, and all that good stuff. But the Flying J food. And that is it for food. And if the Flying J is not for you, there's a Love's truck stop right across the street. I'm not going to go in detail about it because I do go through here a lot. And I might want to revisit this city. But yep, that's the Flying J. Like I told you on I-64, right there. It's actually right east of Louisville, Kentucky. But right now, I'm not there. I'm actually in my yard right now in Joliet, Illinois. I work for Prima Express. And right now, I'm looking at my boss, Linus something. I don't know his last name. He's from Lithuania. I can't pronounce it. And see what he wants me to do. I guess I'll be sitting here waiting, but that's fine. It gives me opportunity to record this episode. Otherwise, I'll be driving, and that's one of my problems with being a truck driver. Is a lot of days I work from 12 to 14 hours, and I do plan on doing an episode, but I just get so tired. And plus, if I wasn't driving, I would go ahead and record it, maybe get a little sleep. But with my profession, I don't want to risk it. Driving around getting tired and then fall asleep at the wheel. Nope, I'm not going to do it. And I have been trying to get a regular routine on this, but I guess as a truck driver, I'm not going to be able to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to research it. Once I get done with the research, then I will put out the episode. I will try to stay within a week, but I don't know. I'll do my best, but Here's the case out of Whitey. Now, the case that I'm about to cover is Indiana. It's actually not too far from where I was at. It happened in Madison, Indiana, and we're talking about the murder of Shanda Shearer. Now, I saw this case before, and I forgot what TV show it was on. If it was one ID channels or Discovery channels, I don't remember which one. But and then I long forgot about it. But when I was researching for this episode, then I remembered. Well, actually, looking for not researching this episode, but looking for something to do around that truck stop. That's when I came across this. But yeah, Madison, Wisconsin, which the town itself is, well, during World War II, I found this interesting. It was a cast of Army training film at as the hometown of GIs were fighting to protect in 1958. It was a town picked by Hollywood for some came running, a film about post-war malice starring Frank Sinatra and Shirley MacLaine. It was a prosperous river and rail center at the 19th century. Its riverfront district is crammed with federal Greek revival, Italian, and then of course I'm going right off the bat. Italian and Gothic revival homes, different like castle type homes, really cool. Which I'll talk about where this location happened today. 133 blocks of the riverfront districts are the National Register of Historic Places. House and garden tours, river races, and art festivals draw tourists by the busload. A recent Saturday night's police officer blotter listed three possible domestic disturbances. Well, this is what happened. As for crime, on three possible domestic disturbance: a dogfight, fireworks, a drunk, a crying woman, several noise complaints, and one break-in at a card shop. So really not a hostile area. Mr. Townsend, the prosecutor, is a former newspaper reporter with a document in British history. He has been on the job for 18 months, and this and what I'm about to, is the first murder that this happened that ever happened. The county of 30,000 has had in 12 years. So like I said, if you move, I don't know the prices. I'm not going to go into the housing prices. I'm not going to do that. But as you can see, like I said, nothing really bad. Dogfight, fireworks, a drunk. Sounds like Mayberry to me. And so if you want, a good place for your kids to grow up, that is it. But not until nothing like this ever happened until the likes of Shanda Shearer. The murder of Shanda Shearer involved a 12-year-old girl. That's her. She was tortured, burned to death in Madison by four teenage girls. Of course, this attracted nationwide attention. As you see, it caught the eyes of many people, to include Dr. Phil did an episode on this. But yeah, Shanda Shearer, let's talk about Shanda, and then we'll talk about the rest of the people involved in this. Shanda Renee Shearer was born in Pineville Community Hospital in Pineville, Kentucky on June 6, 1979, to Steve Shearer and Jacqueline Vaughn. Shearer attended 5th and 6th grade in Louisville at St. Paul School, where she was she was on the cheerleading team, volleyball, and softball teams. After Shanda's parents divorced, her parents remarried, and the family moved to Louisville, where her mother divorced again, and the family moved to New Albany, Indiana in June 1991. Shanda enrolled at Hazelwood Middle School. Early in the school year, she transferred to Our Lady Perpetual High School, a Catholic school in New Albany, where she joined the school's female basketball team. And so that's a little bit about her. Nobody ever said anything negative about her. She's a young girl transferring. She's going through a little bit, but nothing like the likes of what these other three girls came into. So Melinda Loveless. Let's talk about Melinda. Melinda Loveless was born in New Albany, Indiana, in October 28, 1975. The youngest of the three daughters to Marjorie and Larry Loveless. And Larry will find out that he is pretty much a piece of shit. And he kind of explains how Melinda turned out the way she did. But yeah, Larry was drafted in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War, and he was treated as a war hero upon his return. His wife later described him as a pervert who would wear her and her daughter's underwear and makeup, was incapable of staying monogamous, and had a mixture of jealousy and fascination with seeing her have sex with other guys, other men and women. They lived in or near some around there, you moved a lot, about New Albany, Indiana, throughout Melinda's childhood. Larry worked irregularly for the Southern Railroad after his military service. His profession allowed him to work whenever was most convenient for him. In 1972, Larry became a probationary officer with the New Albany Police Department, but he was fired after 8 months when he and his partner assaulted a black man who Larry accused of sleeping with his wife. In 1988, Larry briefly worked at a mail carrier but quit after 3 months. Well, probably got fired because he was doing very little work and he was bringing a lot of the mail at home and destroying it, probably looking for money or the different things. But yeah, he lost that job. Marjorie had worked intermittently since 1974 when both parents were working. The family was financially well, living in the upper middle suburbs of Floyd Knob, Indiana. Larry did not usually share his income with his family, making the mortgage payments and impulsively spending any money he earned on himself, especially for firearms, motorcycles, and cars. He filed for bankruptcy in 1980, and extended family members often described the Loveless daughters as visiting her house hungry and apparently not getting food at home. Though most of their relationship, Larry was unfaithful to his wife, and they often had an open marriage, like I was saying. They would often visit bars in Louisville where Loveless would pretend to be a doctor or a dentist and introduce Marjorie as his girlfriend. He would also share her with some of the friends from work, which she found disgusting. During an orgy with another couple at their house, Marjorie tried to commit suicide, an act she would repeat several times throughout her daughter's childhood. When Melinda was 9 years old, Larry forced Marjorie to participate in a gangbang, which is horrible. Why would anybody, force their wife to do something like that? So I really don't know why she stayed with him with all this. After which she tried to drown herself. After that innocent incident, she refused to have sex with him for a month until he finally raped her as their daughters watch. Now, I read many things where they watch, or some say they were in another room, but either way, they did hear what was going on, and probably really disturbed young Melinda at the time. She was not that old. In the summer of 1986, after she would not let him go home with two women he met at a bar, Larry beat Marjorie so severely that she was hospitalized. He was convicted of battery. The extent of Larry's abuse of his daughters and other children is unclear. Various court testimonies claim he fondled Michelle as an infant, molested Marjorie's 13-year-old sister early in the marriage, molested the girl's cousin Teddy from age 10 to 14, and both elder girls said he molested them. Though Melinda didn't admit that this ever happened to her, she slept in bed with him until he finally abandoned his family when she was 14, which to me it don't seem like a bad thing. But I mean, financially wise, but really is finances worth the harassment of everything this man was doing to them? I don't know. I don't think so. That's just me. In court, Teddy described the incident in which Larry tied all three sisters in the garage and raped them in succession. However, the sisters did not confirm this account. Larry was verbally abusive to his daughters and fired a handgun in Michelle's direction when she was 7. Initially missing her, he would also embarrass his children by this is what I think is crazy, finding their underwear and smelled it in front of the family members. This guy was not right. But for 2 years, beginning when Melinda was 5, the family was deeply involved in the Graceland Baptist Church. Larry and Marjorie gave full confessions and renounced drinking and swinging while they were members. Larry became a Baptist lay preacher, and Marjorie became the school nurse. The church later arranged for Melinda to be taken to a motel room with a 50-year-old man for a 5-hour exorcism. Okay. Larry became a marriage counselor with the church and acquired a reputation of being too forward with women, eventually attempting to rape one of them, and their old habits came back. After this incident, the Loveless parents left the church and returned to their former professions, drinking and open marriage, back to their former self. In November 1990, Larry was caught spying on Melinda and a friend, and Marjorie attacked him with a knife, sending him to the hospital after he attempted to grab it. She then attempted suicide again, and her daughters called authorities after the incident. Larry filed for divorce and moved to Avon Park, Florida. Avon Park, this is when he left and made Melinda sleep with him during this time. Right before this, Melinda felt crushed, especially as Larry remarried. He sent letters to her for a while, playing on her emotions, but eventually severed all contact with her, would stop talking to her. And that was the last he heard from her. Okay, so that is Melinda Lovelace. The next person I want to talk about is Mary Lorraine Tackett. She was born in Madison, Indiana, October 5th, 1974. Her mother was a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian, and her father was a factory worker with 2 felony convictions in the 1960s. Laura claimed that she was molested at least twice as a child at ages 5 and 12. In May of 1989, the mother discovered that Lori was changing into jeans at school one day because, Pentecostal, they have to have dresses or culottes. I think what there was, I belonged to a church for a while, and they were not having women wearing jeans. It was crazy. But they wear culottes, which is just super baggy shorts, which I was always confused about that. I always joke around about that, about the dresses and stuff like that, because they had to have easy access for the Baptist. But yeah, found her changing in jeans at school, and after confronting, she confronted her that night, attempted to strangle her. Social workers became involved, and Laura's parents agreed to an unannounced visit to ensure that the child's, well, let me see. Laura's parents agreed to an unannounced visit. I guess they had to announce it to her before they called, to ensure that the child abuse was not occurring anymore. Laura and her mother came into periodic conflicts. At one point, her mother went to Hope Rippey's house. After we'll talk more about her house after learning that Rippey's father had purchased a Ouija board for the girls. She demanded that the board be burnt and the Hope's house be exorcised. So yeah, she was definitely one high mighty roller. Plus, a Ouija board probably was made by Parker Brothers. But anyhow, Laura became increasingly rebellious after her 15th birthday and also became fascinated with the occult. She would often attempt to oppress her friends by pretending to be possessed by the spirit of Diana the Vampire. She began to engage in self-harm, especially after early 1991, when she began dating a girl who was involved in the practice. Her parents discovered that the self-mutilation and checked her into a hospital on March 19, 1991. She was prescribed an antidepressant and released 2 days later with her girlfriend and Tony Lawrence. She cut her wrists deeply and was returned to the hospital, which is another person we'll talk about, Tony Lawrence. That'll be the fourth one we'll talk about. After treatment of her wound, she was admitted to the hospital psychotic ward. She was, if you listen to me for my proper pronunciation of words, then you're listening to the wrong one. I am a mush mouth like you wouldn't believe it. I do my best, but I am not perfect. But anyhow, here we go. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and confessed that she had experienced hallucinations since she was a young child. She was discharged on April 12th. She dropped out of school in September of 1991. So Laura stayed in Louisville area until October 1991 to live with various friends. She met Melinda Loveless, which we talked about, but the two did not become friends until late November and December. Tackett moved back to Madison on the promise that her father would buy her a car. She still spent most of the time in Louisville and New Albany, and by this summer, most of it was with Melinda Loveless. So there's the first two girls. We talked about Shanda Shearer, and then we talked about Melinda, and this girl right here, Laura. And those are the two. Now, you can see how your childhood was not the best. Crazy sexual abuse and everything like that. Now, these next two girls, there's really not much about them. But all the same, they did have kind of a bad childhood, what a lot of people say. But Hope Rippey, Anna Renee, Hope Anna Rippey I was trying to get Anna and Rippey confused and just ran into Renee for some reason. But yeah, Hope Annie Rippey was born in Madison, Indiana in June 1976. Her father was an engineer at a power plant. Her parents divorced in February 1984. You see one thing about the divorce, but these three girls, and she moved to Quincy, Michigan with her mother and siblings for 3 years. She claimed that living with her family in Michigan was somewhat turbulent. Her parents resumed their relationship in Madison in 1987. She was reunited with her friends Lori Tackett and Tony Lawrence, whom she had known since childhood. Although her parents saw Lori as a bad influence, as with the other girls, Hope began to do self-harm at age 15. So cutting her wrist, getting to know, probably listen to Depeche Mode or The Cure. I got all kinds of stories about that, but then we'll be here all day about my sister and her friends, and I don't think she wants me to put that out in the public, so I won't. Now let's talk about the final girl of this group, Tony Lawrence. Tony Lawrence was born in Madison, Indiana, February of 1976. Her father was a boilermaker. She was close friends with Hope Rippey from childhood onward, from She was abused by a relative at age 9 and was raped by a teenager boy at age 14. Although the police were only able to issue an order to keep the boy away from Tony, she went into counseling after the incident but did not follow through. She became promiscuous, began to self-harm and attempt suicide in the 8th grade. So you can see from Melinda, Laura, Hope, their childhoods was not very good, which could probably be connected to reason why they did what they did. I don't know. Only they will know, or we'll find out what they did. Let's find out what these three girls did to Shanda Shearer. So events prior to everything, all shit went to hell. In 1990, Melinda Loveless met and began dating, I forgot, Amanda Heverin. Now, I don't really have nothing on her. She was just Melinda's girlfriend at the time, which was actually the cause of a lot of this. But a lot of it was because of Melinda's jealousy. After her father left and her mother remarried, Melinda was erratic, depressed in counseling, and fighting at school. In March 1991, she came out of the closet to her mother, who was initially furious, but eventually accepted it. In the fall of 1990, Melinda's relationship with Amanda deteriorated, and Loveless came to associate this deterioration with Shanda Shearer. So this is where she comes into the picture. Amanda and Shanda met early in the school year when they got into a fight. However, they became friends while in detention. After the altercation, Melinda immediately became jealous, even though she was broke up. But all the same, she was jealous of the relationship. In early October, the two girls attended a school dance when Melinda found them and confronted them. Although Amanda and Melinda never formally ended their relationship, involvement together, Melinda began dating older women. Older girl, I guess. She was a senior. And a lot of things I read said that Amanda and Shanda, some say that they were in a relationship, some say they were just friends. Close friends. Of course, Shonda just, pretty much new to the school, so she's probably just looking for somebody to associate and, you try to fit in. But unfortunately, you find out that she met the wrong person. Now, Amanda was not the wrong person, but Melinda decided that it was not happening. But Melinda became increasingly jealous when Amanda and Shonda went to a festival together In late October, she began discussing killing Shanda and threatened her in public, concerned about their daughter's relationship with Amanda. Shanda's parents arranged for her to be transferred to Catholic school in late November, and the girls started drifting apart in December. They never reformed their relationship at all. So at that time, when Shanda went to the new school, they pretty much quit talking. They were separated. So, but here's when everything went crazy. Of course, Melinda still is upset about that. And on January 10th, Tony Lawrence, Hope Rippey, and Lori Tackett, the three girls I was talking about, there's one more, drove in Tackett's car from Madison, Indiana to Melinda Loveless's house in New Albany. Hope and Tony, while friends of Lori, had not met Melinda. However, upon arrival, they borrowed some clothes from her, and she showed them a knife and told them that she was going to scare Shanda with it. None of the girls except for Melinda had ever met Shanda, although Laura already knew of the plan to intimidate the 12-year-old girl. Not Melinda. Melinda explained to the other, I better slow down because it's all going to run together. Explained to two other girls that she disliked Shanda for being a copycat and for stealing her girlfriend, even though they were not dating at the time. Here I'm talking about these teenage kids. Keep in mind these are all teenage kids. To talk about their relationship, they probably don't even know what a relationship or love or anything like that. They're just going through their juvenile minds and schoolhouse crushes. But yeah, Laura let Hope drive them to Shauna's house in Jeffersonville, Indiana, stopping at McDonald's restaurant for directions. Of course, this is before cell phones and GPSs. They arrived at her house shortly after dark, and Melinda instructed Laura and Tony to go to the door because Melinda was already having trouble with Shanda. So if she saw Shanda, she would not go. So introduced themselves as friends of Amanda and invite Shanda to come to them to see her girlfriend who was waiting for her at a place called the Witch's Castle. Said that she could not go because her parents was awake and told the girls to come back around midnight. So let's talk about this. A little note about this, like a little castle. The witch's castle. The witch's castle in Utica, Indiana, was once home of a covenant of witches. Was supposed. It was a site of course, I won't get to that. Almost I left that in there for some reason, but paranormal investigators used the site for experimentations. According to historical tale, a covenant of witches once lived in a crumbling stone structure resembling a castle in the trees of Utica. I hope I'm saying that right. Utica, Indiana, Riverside. Local residents didn't trust the women, so they burned down the castle. Since then, brave teenagers or risk takers have explored the area, often vandalizing the remains. There are rumors that this place is haunted, earning it the names Witch's Castle. Paranormal investigators have visited the land, and the castle is one of the most unusual, spooky structures in the United States. Of course, there are many rumors about this place with ghosts, witches, and stuff like that. One legend explains that you can sometimes hear a little girl laughing in the woods, as well as a loud thumping. People also seen a white mist moving throughout the castle. Many people have actually seen a girl wearing a white dress with long black hair covering her face. So it's a haunted place. Like I guess when I was a teenager, I used to go to this place called Axman's Bridge, where a lot of people think that some lovers went there to have sex, and then the boyfriend went out to take a piss, and then they hear like a thumping on the roof, and that was his body hanging from there. But it was just a scared cat. We just went there to drink beer. It was out of the way, and hardly no police ever went there. I never seen no police there, but never seen no ghost. So Melinda was angry at first, but Lori and Tony assured her that they could return back to her because she couldn't leave because her parent was up. Told her to come back after midnight. So Melinda was angry at first, but Laura and Tony assured her that they could return for her later. The four girls crossed the river into Louisville, went to a punk rock concert at the Albion skate park near I-65. Tony and Hope quickly lost interest in the music and went to the parking lot outside the skate park where they engaged in sexual activities with two boys they met at the concert in Laura's car. And hopefully they cleaned up, but I doubt it. But eventually the girls left Sean to go back to Son. Eventually the girls left for Shauna's house. During the ride, Melinda said that she could not wait to kill Shanda. Until then they were just intimidating her. They weren't planning on killing her like that. Well, Melinda probably knew about the murder and maybe Laura, but the other two girls was not aware of it. So, like I said, however, she also said that she found her. This is what I think is crazy. She also said that she found her attractive and would like to have sex with her, and that she was just intending to use the knife to frighten her. So I don't think she knew what she wanted to do. Then they arrived at Shonda's house at about 12:30 a.m. Tony refused to retrieve Shonda, so Laura and Hope went. Melinda, who was previously harassed by Shonda many times, hid on her blanket in the back seat of the car with the knife. So yeah, did not want to be seen. So Shonda was waiting for them. Hope told that Amanda was waiting for her at Witch's Castle, like I said earlier. She was reluctant, but yet agreed. She didn't want to go at first. But after changing her clothes, Melinda was in the back seat hiding under her blanket with the knife. So as soon as Shonda jumped in, got in the car in the back seat, that's when Shonda jumped out and she put the knife to Shonda's throat as they got into the car and drove towards Utica, Indiana. The witch's castle, Laura told the girls that legend said the house was once owned by 9 witches. And townspeople burned the house down to get rid of the witches. So they're telling her the story about where they're going to take her to. And she was probably, I can imagine, scared. Got a knife through her throat with this one girl who's already been trying to fight her many times with jealousy. And these 3 girls that she didn't even know. So at the witch's castle, they took Shonda. And by the way, this is when it's going to get pretty bad, what they did to this poor girl. But I have to say, she was one tough little girl. She did not take, she was scared, but she was tough. And you'll soon see why. At the witch's castle, they took Shonda in and bound her arms and legs with rope. The girls were scared by the headlights of passing cars, so they left for a place near Laura's house, stopping for gas, and they get lost again for a while before finally making their way to Madison, Indiana. So that's when they took Shonda out of the car. Laura led them to a garbage dump off a logging road in a densely forested area where Tony and Hope were frightened and stayed in the car. As Melinda and Lori made Shonda strip, then Laura beat her with her fist, then repeatedly slammed her face into her knee, cutting Shonda's mouth on her braces. Melinda tried to slash Shonda's throat, but the knife was too dull. As Hope came out of the car to hold Shonda down, Melinda and Lori took turns stabbing her in the chest and then strangling her with a rope until she was unconscious. And a lot of people, they probably thought she was dead, but you don't realize that a person, once you start choking them, all you're gonna do is eliminate the oxygen to their brain at first, so they'll pass out. But that don't necessarily mean they're gonna die. It takes a long time to strangle somebody because you have to, even after the time they pass out, you still have to strangle them longer to really eliminate the oxygen to their brain until they die. But at first, they just pass out, kind of like a wrestler does to a sleeping hold. At this time, they placed her in the trunk and told the other 2 girls that Shonda was dead, like I said. Then they went to Laura's nearby home and went inside to drink soda and clean themselves. Then, this poor girl, they realized Shonda was screaming in the trunk. So Laura went out with a paring knife, which is a very small knife, and stabbed her several more times. Coming in a few minutes later, covered in blood after she washed, she got her runestones out and told the girls futures with them. Tony and Hope stayed behind as the other 2 went country cruising at 2:30 in the morning. Driving to the nearby town of Cannon, Shana continued making, like I said, crying and gurgling noises. So she was still alive. She didn't need to do this all. So Laura stopped the car. Shanda sat up, covered in blood, and her eyes rolled to the back of her head. I bet you that really scared this Laura at the time, because probably thought she was a zombie, but was unable to speak. Laura then beat her with a tire iron until she was silent. They returned to Laura's house just before daybreak to clean up again. Hope asked about what happened to Shauna, and Laura laughingly told them about the torture. The, the conversation woke up Laura's mother, who yelled at her daughter for being out so late and bringing her home the girl. So Laura agreed to take them home. She drove to a burn pile near Laura's house and showed the other two girls. Shauna, Tony refused to look, and Hope sprayed Shearer with Windex and taunted her with this is what she said. She said, you're not looking so hot now, are you? Really? And I don't know if she was alive at the time or she was awake, but she was just spraying with her. And by the way, I forgot to mention when she was at the witch's castle, they were taunting her really bad, just making fun of her. This poor girl. The girls drove to a gas station near Madison High School, pumped some gas into the car, and bought a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi. Laura emptied the bottle and refilled it with gasoline. They drove north of Madison, just past Jefferson Proving Ground, to a place with which Hope was familiar with off of 421 US 421, what was called Lemon Road. They placed Shonda, still alive, in a blanket and carried her into a field by the gravel country road. Laura made Hope pour the gasoline on her, and then they set her on fire. And then they left. Of course, Melinda was not convinced that she was dead, so they returned a few minutes later to pour the rest of the gasoline on her to finish the job. So the girls went into McDonald's, and it was crazy. 9:30 for breakfast. The girls laughed about Shonda looking like one of the sausages they were eating. Tony, horrified, called a friend told her, Tony's somebody. She was. I don't know. A lot of the things I said. She's the one who really. Well, let me just tell you the story. Tony, horrified, called a friend and told her about the murder. Lori then dropped Tony and Hope off at their homes and returned home with Melinda. They cleaned out the car using a hose to wash out the trunk. They then drove to Melinda's house around 3 p.m. Melinda found out Amanda was at River Falls Mall and had her page claim an emergency. They told her that they had killed Shauna and arranged to pick up Amanda later that day. Melinda's friend Crystal Wathen came over and they told her about what had happened. Then the three girls drove to pick up Amanda and bring her back to Melinda's house. They then told her the story. While she did not believe it was true, she confronted the hysterical Melinda. Both Amanda and Crystal was convinced when Lori showed them the trunk with Shauna's bloody handprints and socks still in there. So now let's see how they got busted. So later on that morning, on January 11th, two brothers from Cannon, Indiana, was driving towards Jefferson Proving Ground to do a little bit of hunting when they noticed something on the side of the road. They called the police at 10:55 and was asked to return to the body. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Buck Shipley and the Buck Shipley, what a name of detective. I am Detective Buck Shipley, Sheriff Officer, and detectives arrived to begin an investigation, taking forensic evidence at the scene. They initially suspected a drug deal gone wrong and could not believe the crime could be work of locals. Like I said, this was a very peaceful town. At first, there was really nothing going on. So when this happened, it was, what the hell is going on? It can't be nobody from here. It has to be from outsiders. So Steve Shearer noticed his daughter was missing because they don't know who the body was. It's burnt pretty bad, so they don't know who it is. So back to Steve Shearer noticed his daughter was missing early on January 11th. After calling neighbors and friends all morning, he called his ex-wife Jacqueline, Shauna's mother, at 1:45 p.m. and the two met and filed a missing report with the sheriff. At 8:20 p.m., hysterical Tony Lawrence went to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office with her parents. She gave a rambling statement identifying the victim as Shauna, naming the three other girls involved as best as she could, and describing the main events of the previous night. But Shipley contacted the Clark County Sheriff, and was finally unable to match the victim to Shanda Shear's missing persons report. Detective Howard Henry went to Shanda's house, then obtained dental records that positively identified her as the victim. Melinda Laura was arrested on January 12th. The bulk of the evidence was for the arrest was a warrant for was because of Tony's statement. She knocked them all out. The prosecution immediately declared it intention to try all of them try them all as adult. I think they're only talking about Melinda and Laura. For several months, the prosecutors and defense attorneys did not release any information on the case, leaving the media only the statement by Tony. So just whatever she said, that's all they were saying. And I really don't think they put out the names here because they were juveniles at the time. They were under 18, which was repeated in the arrest warrant and contained a general background of the crime. So let's get into the sentencing. So as adults, they could have faced the death penalty. All four girls were tried as adults. So to avoid a death penalty, all four girls accepted plea bargains. Laura and Melinda Loveless, they were the main case. The judge quickly sentenced them, said, "Be gone with you two. 60 years in the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis. Be gone with you. Bye." For a maximum time reduced for good behavior, they could be released in 2020, which I'll get into that later. Tony was sentenced to be gone with you two, young girl Tony, 20 years in prison. Thank you for knocking your friends out, but we're going to give you 20. Hope Ripley was sentenced to 60 years with 10 suspended for mitigating circumstances and 10 years of medium supervision probation with time reduced for good behavior. She was released in 2006, which I'll get into the other girls. So sentencing reductions. In October 2007, Melinda's attorney Mark Small requested a hearing to argue for his client's release. He said that Melinda had been profoundly retarded. Now that's me. I'm not calling her retarded. I would say mentally handicapped, but the lawyer said profoundly retarded by childhood abuse and was not represented competently by counsel during her sentencing, which caused her to accept a plea only because extra of claims that the chances of her being executed was high. Her attorney also argued that Melinda, who was also 16 when she signed the plea bargain, was too young to enter into a contract of the state of Indiana without consent from an adult or guardian, neither of which have been obtained. If the judge accepted either argument, she could have been released outright. However, after attorney was unable to see his client the night before the hearing was delayed until December 6, 2007. On January 8, 2008, a sentence reduction and request to overturn Melinda's guilty plea was rejected by the Jefferson County Circuit Judge Ted Todd. Instead, Loveless will be eligible for parole in 15 years, thus maintaining the original guilty plea. On November 14th, 2008, Melinda's appeal was denied by the Indiana Court of Appeals, upholding Judge Ted Todd's ruling. Mark Small stated that he will seek to have jurisdiction over the case moved to Indiana Supreme Court. So they're really trying to push this. So the crime was documented, and so I'm getting tongue tied as usual. But yeah, so they're all in jail. No one was not in jail right now is Hope Ripley, which she got in 2006, which I will get to that. And this was a pretty big case. At the aftermath of this case, the crime was documented in two true crime books, Little Lost Angel by Michael Quillen and Crew Sacrifice by Aphrodite Jones. Jones' book on the case became a New York Times bestseller. The story was turned into a play by Rob Benatti called Hazelwood Junior High, which starred Cleo Savina as Laura Tackett. The play was published by Samuel French Incorporated in September of 2009. Also an episode of the 5th season of Law & Order, a Special Victims Unit that aired on February 24, 2004, was based on a murder. Cold Case second season episode, The Sleepover, is also based on the case. So if you want to know more about this case. But yeah, and this is, Shanda was not the only one who was murdered in this case. Everything, there's many victims too. She was a young girl. And of course, the second victim of this case was Shanda Shear's dad, died of cancer in 2005 at the age of 53. He was buried next to his daughter. In an interview with Shanda's mother, Jack, on the TV series Deadly Woman, she stated that Shear's father was so destroyed by his daughter's murder that he did everything could do to kill himself, besides put a gun to his head, and that he drank himself to death. The man definitely died from a broken heart, which I can understand. I can imagine live without my. I have two girls. I couldn't, or a son too. I'm the one not gonna leave him out, but I don't know, something about a girl that is just they're my babies. Another thing, the Shanda Shear Scholarship Fund was established in January of 2009. It was written in the contract that the recipient will receive a plaque or document of some type that tells Shanda's story. The fund plans to provide scholarships to 2 students per year with, Passer School of Technology in New Albany. One scholarship will go to a student who is continuing his or her education. Another scholarship will go to a student who is beginning his or her career and must buy tools and who needs to buy tools and work equipment. And like I said, Dr. Phil did in 2011. Dr. Phil aired a two-part series on the crime, which featured interviews with Shanda's mother, sisters, also confronted Hope Rippey on the show, which I wanted to watch to try to get a little more information about it, but I could not find it. I went to drphil.com and I could not get it to work. I could find clips of it on YouTube, but I can never follow the whole thing. But in August 2011, episode 11, studios interviewed and filmed both Melinda Loveless and in the Indiana Women's Prison and Jacqueline Vaught at her office for a documentary they are produced entitled Charlie Scars. Both Loveless and Vaught are closely featured, and that's another woman, Jacqueline Vaught, which I'll look her up. Maybe I'll do a case on her next time. In the documentary, which was submitted to the Sundance Film Festival in September 2011 for the 2012 festival. So, there you go, Shanda. The murder of Shanda Shear by Melinda. And let's talk about Melinda. The wake of his daughter's sentencing. Remember Melinda? Remember with her dad? Let's talk a little bit about him. In the wake of his daughter's sentencing hearing, in which extensive open court testimony about Larry Loveless was given, so everything, they tried all kinds of mitigating evidence against, for her, which brought up Larry Loveless was given. He was arrested in February of 1993 and brought back to Floyd County, Indiana, to face charges of rape, sodomy, and sexual battery. The majority of the crimes he was accused of occurred from 1968 to 1977. Loveless remained in prison for over 2 years awaiting trial. However, a judge eventually ruled all except one count for a sexual battery incident in 1989 had to be dropped due to statute of limitations, which have 5 years in Indiana. Loveless eventually accepted a plea of sexual battery in a sentence time served and was released in 1995. Yep, so I would like to think it's some type of karma because of her actions was related to how he raised her. Well, once she got in trouble, his past came back on him, and he got in trouble too, off to jail with you too, asshole. But yeah, a few weeks following his release in 1995, Larry Lawless was briefly in the news again, this time for unsuccessfully suing the Floyd County Jail for $39 million in federal court, alleging he had suffered cruel and unusual punishment during his 2-year incarceration. Ain't this some shit? Among his complaints was that he was not allowed to sleep in his bed during the day and not allowed to read the newspaper. You hear that? Remember how he raised his kids and how he treated his wife? Everything, yeah. He's going to bitch and try to sue. Of course, that was nonsense. He just do that shit out of court quick as it went in and came in. But let's talk about the girls and how much time they spent in jail. Let's say start with Melinda Loveless. Melinda Loveless was released from Indiana's Women's Prison in Indianapolis on Thursday, September 5th, 2019, after serving 23 years and 8 months of a 60-year sentence. Laura Tackett was released from Rockville Correctional Center facility on January 11th, 2018, 20, the 26th anniversary of Shanda's death, after serving nearly 26 years and has completed additional year parole. By the way, uh, other girl, and I won't forget her name. Melinda is still on parole. She's serving in Kentucky. Hope Rippey was sentenced to 60 years, then 10 years suspended for mitigating circumstances. Upon late appeal, her sentence was reduced to 35 years. She was released early on April 28, 2002 from Indiana Women's Prison after serving 14 years of her original sentence. No word if she's on parole or probation or anything like that. And last is Toni Lawrence. In exchange for her extensive testimony, which if it wasn't for her, I don't think. Well, they probably would eventually figured out who it was, but then again, it was '93, so who knows? Toni Lawrence received the lightest sentence. She pleaded guilty to one count of criminal confinement and was sentenced to a maximum of 20 years. She was released December 14th, 2000, after serving 9 years in prison. And poor Shanda is still dead, and her father, because of it, is also dead. And she was one tough girl. She did not go out with a fight. And I'm sorry, I said 93 earlier, but it was 92. Her death was January 11th, 92. And if you want to go see her, she's buried right next to her father at Big Springs Methodist Church Cemetery building in Breckinridge County, Kentucky, U.S. in Kentucky, Kentucky. And there you go. That's the death of Shanda Shearer, a 12-year-old that just happened to try to become friends with new students, end up meeting the wrong person and got in between a jealous relationship that was already broken up, and sadly she paid the price for it, which that came out wrong. But you know what I'm saying. She just wrong place, wrong time, and three girls who grew up in a devastating, bad household. But anyway, there you go. If you like the telling of the story, I know the story was horrible, but if you like to tell the story, please write a review, iTunes, or anywhere you can. But mainly, just share with a friend. I'm hopefully get my Patreon and PayPal. They're up, but I don't know if they're working. If I do something, I'm not a computer, genius or nothing like that. I'm trying to figure this out as I go. I know it's been a few years, but I just recently did the Patreon PayPal. But I don't know if I did it right, so I'm gonna try to figure it out. Anyhow, there you have it. If you like what you hear, good. You get what you get. If you don't like it, then you could get. I'm a busy truck driver working 12, 14 hours a day, but I do like this, and my wife enjoys the stories that I tell. So, as always, I like to end this with you can't always fix stupid, but you can sure numb it with a 2x4. I'm out of here.